Welcome back to the halftime show here on K105. It's time for another edition of our Cougar Conversations. Today we are joined by the first secretary for Grayson County High School, Miss Linda Baxter. First secretary at Grayson County High School, opens in 1974. What were those first few, let's not even say first few weeks or first few months, what were those first few days like at the new Grayson County High School?
Well, you can't imagine. First of all, when you tell how long I've been there, it must make me sound like a really old lady.
Not at all, not at all.
Well, we worked a little while before we actually started working at the high school. It was this a bookkeeper and the principals and assistant principals and the four counselors, I think it was, from the other schools. So I don't know what kind of stuff they did before we got ready for school, but we spent a few days, maybe weeks, a few weeks, making out schedules for the students. Maybe the kids picked their schedules before they left their school. I don't really know how we chose that, but that's how we first met. And there were 9 of us, and I only knew one person there. Burnett Wortham was the counselor, and she was my counselor in high school. So it didn't take very long to figure out different personalities. You know, some were really serious and some were not so serious, but it was that was good. I got to know those people first, and I guess they were the main people. And then I don't remember exactly how long it was, but Miss Shizer and I were taken to the school to see our office. We had a big counter that was this tall, and you sat on a bar stool. And there was one bar stool, but there were 2 of us. So we kept thinking, you know, one's going to be standing up. But by the time we started to work, they had another desk, and it had a phone on it. That was mine. Her area had a big counter where she counted money, a money drawer, and that sort of thing. Now, I never got involved with bookkeeping. She was the first bookkeeper, and then she retired after, I don't know, 13 or 14 years, and Ann Raymer was the bookkeeper, and she worked there long enough to retire as well. She retired after I did, but I'm not sure what year she retired. But anyway, the phone itself was a real trip. At that time in your home, you only had if you were lucky, you had a phone, but it was a party line phone. All your neighbors were on the phone, the same line you were, so you picked up the phone, and if somebody was using it, you just had to wait, unless you were nosy and you could listen in. But anyway, I shouldn't go into that, but this phone was my phone, and I had to make every call into the building and every call out of the building, even the principal. So, and there weren't very many extensions. So I didn't have a lot of calls for other people, but it kept you hopping just in the office. And so we toured our office that day. And then they had an opening day where countywide teachers were together, and I knew a few of those people from Clarkson, but not very many. So the first day we met our staff. I knew 8 of them. Now, I'm not sure how many there were, maybe 40, 45, but you had names and room numbers, but I did not have a face with a name for a very long time. And one particular time, Mr. Ray sent me to give everybody something or collect something from everybody. And I was so happy with myself because I found everybody except the art teacher, Elsie Hayes. I didn't have any idea who Elsie Hayes was. So when I came back to the office and told him that, he said, Miss Baxter, we can't lose a teacher. And I'm thinking, oh man, I've really messed up. So he said, you'll have to find her. So I start down the hall, and you know, if I had met Miss Hayes in the hall, I wouldn't know it was Miss Hayes. So I found out pretty early that Mr. Given was kind of my go-to person. That's the day I found that out. He met me in the hall, and I guess I look like I'm so confused, and he wanted to know what what I was doing. And I told him, and I said, I don't know where she is. He said, give it to me. I'll take care of it. And he did. Like I said, he was kind of my go-to person. He was assistant principal with Mr. Ray, and Mr. McGee was assistant principal. I got along well with all of those guys. Mr. Ray he was a fine Christian man, and he was a perfectionist. And I was a little intimidated. I would tell him that now. And I tell everybody, we worked together there, and then he moved to the middle school, and then he also worked at the Board of Education in food service, and he and I were constantly on the phone. I processed the lunch applications and that sort of thing. So, we got along beautifully. And then when we both retired, we walked at the First Baptist Church, and we talked every day, and it was kind of funny. The first two principals were older than me, quite a bit. John Hill Taylor was the second principal. He was wonderful to work with. He was different than Mr. Ray. He had been around a long time. He knew everybody in the county, and by that time I knew all the people that I was working with, so it was lots easier. And then Teddy White came along, and I can't say enough good things about Mr. White. He was close to my age. We had the same background, both raised here, and we had the same background. We didn't know each other before the schools consolidated, but like I said, I can't say enough good things about him. We just loved him, and I'm still really good friends with Mr. White. I keep up with him, and he and Susan used to take Miss Shizer and me, or Ann and me, out 2 or 3 times in the summer for lunch, and he was just everything he needed to be. And then after Mr. White was Mr. Crane, and not hardly anything changed with Mr. Crane. He had been Mr. White's assistant, so those years, and I don't remember how long he stayed. He moved on over to Lawler. And then Arnold Hack was the next principal, and like Mr. White and Mr. Crane, we were all close in age, and that was good too. He had 2 assistants, Mr. Adams and Mr. Berryman. And then when he left, we had 3 new principals, and that was strange in the beginning. None of them were from this county, and no one knew them. When Mr. Crane was principal, the site-based council they brought in the site-based council, and that was made up of parents of students in the high school and teachers, and they chose, they did interviews, and they would recommend to the superintendent who they wanted to hire for principal, and then the principal would bring in his, he would recommend who he wanted. But anyway, we had 3 new principals that year, and I didn't have any problems working with them once we all got to know each other. And Mr. Hahn, I'm not sure how long he stayed. The assistant stayed beyond his tenure, but Mr. Graham left before Mr. Skaggs. Mr. Skaggs was a softball coach as well, so he stayed on for a little while. And then after Mr. Huffman came Mr. Robinson, and I call them the kids, Mr. Robinson and Mr. Johnston, because they were students when I was first there. Well, not first there. They were students a while after that. But it was fun working with both of them. We had a good time most of the time. Mr. Robinson's daughter was in elementary, about this tall, in elementary school at Lawler, and she would come over in the afternoons and wait with me while he loaded the buses, and we played games and just had a big time. And
how did Grayson County High School evolve throughout your years working there?
Well, there's just really no comparison. When we started school, there was a blue enrollment card about the size of index card, and on the front of that it had all of the information that you needed to know about that student. On the back of the card it had a list of the siblings and what school they attended, and that was the go-to card if a student had been absent for 3 or 4 days and the bus driver didn't know what was going on. Sometimes you could contact the bus driver. we would call one of the other schools to see if perhaps all of the kids were missing and maybe they'd moved. Um, and if you couldn't find out anything by the information that was on the card and someone in the building knew their neighbor, you could ask their neighbor or call their grandmother. Well, before I left, you couldn't do any of that. Of course, we'd moved on to from that blue card, we'd gone to lots of other things and wound up with a computer screen with all this information. But because of society, a lot of our kids lived in two homes, broken homes. And a lot of times the other spouse didn't get along, or the grandmothers didn't get along with one of them. So they couldn't see, you couldn't call grandma because they weren't allowed to see grandma, and grandma wasn't allowed to pick them up. So that really changed. It was like you could know about the kid today, but tomorrow that might all change. It would change in the computer. So every time you did anything with a student, you had to refer to that. And we had one incident where we had several kids who had the very same name. And I know about that because there's another Linda Baxter in this county, and it does get confusing. But a lady called in to tell me to give her child a note. And I did. And when I gave it to the child, he looked so puzzled. But I didn't think anything about it. Well, the next day, the lady called and she was really, really upset with me. I had given it to the wrong kid. They had the same name, and I should have asked more. Now where you call, they want your social security number or your birth date. Well, that's why. And she was really upset with me. And you just have to look at that and say you win a few and lose a few. You can say you're sorry, and that's all you can do. It wasn't anything major. The kid that didn't get the message had a harder time than the one who did. But
When I say E.E. McGee, what comes to mind?
well, I tell you what, I knew Mr. McGee vaguely. I mean, I had seen him a time or two before we started working, but he was everywhere all the time. He wasn't as serious as he needed to be, but he did discipline the kids. But it took a long time when he was going to paddle one, and that's another thing. Paddling was just something that even the teachers did, and I had to witness it when they paddled a girl. But he's been around a long time, and he's really funny. He if you didn't have anything to do, he could really be entertaining. For instance, there was a lady who came into the school one day, and I probably shouldn't tell this, but she's probably already gone, and she doesn't have any relatives who know me, but this lady came in, and Mr. McGee would always tease everyone, So this lady walked in, and I'd gone to school with her, and we talked a little bit, and Mr. McGee walked up to her, and he says, "You went to school with Miss Baxter? Well, she looks a lot older than you do." And I'm thinking, Mr. McGee, don't tell me that, So anyway, the lady left, and he said, "Linda, I was just teasing. She really looks old." This is the type of thing that he did. And, I'm the last person that started to work there in the beginning that was full-time. I'm the last one to retire. Mr. McGee retired before I did, but he came back as, he helped out with the buses in the afternoons and the after-school activities.
What about Teddy White? You mentioned a little bit about him. What comes to mind?
Well, he just had a way with people, I'm going to tell you. There was a lady who came in the office one day, and I knew her very well. And she was a really nice lady, probably the first time she ever came into the school. Her daughter had done something, and Mr. White either punished her or was going to punish her, and the child had gone home and told her mother. So her mother came in, and like I said, we were friends, and she looked at me, and she said, he's accused her of something that she didn't do. She said, she told me she didn't do it, and she does not lie. Well, I was a teenager, and if you were a teenager and didn't lie, that's a pretty good.
You were lying.
Yeah, absolutely. But I didn't say anything. We were friends. But it was kind of funny. He took her in the office, and when she came out, she had this awful expression on her face. It looked like she was terribly embarrassed. She looked at me, and she said, "Linda, I'm going to kill her." So, he had a way of convincing people that if he said it, that's the way it was. And then we had another incident where a little gal had lost her jacket. Lost it, somebody stole it or whatever. Anyway, she said someone stole it. So at the end of the day, Mr. White brought me the jacket and told me when she comes to pick it up, she can have it. So she came to get it, and she said, well, that didn't take very long. She said, is he God? I know what he did. He asked people in the classrooms, be looking for this jacket and stuff. And then the kids had a way, they wanted to have a skip day. The seniors always wanted to have a senior skip day close to the end of school. And they would take doors off of teachers' classrooms and hide them. And I think after I left, I think they might have done some things a little worse than that. But anyway, they had a senior skip day, and I think they all wound up at the lake, and Teddy White showed up. And he was just good at solving problems. He was good with people. He was kind and understanding, and he just, like I said, I can't say enough good things about him.
Who do you still stay in contact with?
Everybody, just about everybody. I never did Facebook while I was working. I could have, but I never did Facebook while I was working. And so when you get on Facebook, you see all these friends who are friends with somebody else, and do you want to be their friend? So I select a lot of those, and it's really fun to look at some of these people, the things that they put on about their family and their kids, and lots of them have grandkids now. It's just really fun. And some of the kids that have done so well that I didn't know about. There was a little lady that used to come in the office a whole lot when she was in high school, and everybody else called me Miss Baxter, but she called me Miss Ma'am. And I saw a picture of her. I'm friends with her on Facebook, and I saw a picture of her the other day. She's a principal in another county, and someone in her school was honoring her, and she had this big bouquet of flowers. So I commented on it, and I said, from Miss Ma'am, and she commented back. So it's really nice to have still be in contact with some of these people. And I went to the 50-year thing that was on the square, and I saw a lot of people that I hadn't seen for a while. But it was just, I stay in contact with a lot of people. And everywhere I go, I know people. I mean, I go into the courthouse, a lawyer's office, the grocery. All the public officials came through the high school. Norman Chafin's our sheriff. When I see him, he wants to hug me. He always gives me a big Doug hugged me a while ago. These little guys, now that I'm old, they want to hug me. And we were visiting the funeral home one day, and Norman came up to get his hug, and some fella asked my husband, said, "Does it not bother you that somebody's hugging your wife?" And James said, "Well, he's got the gun." But it's really neat. I love Norman, and when I see him, I want him to hug me. So I probably made some enemies while I was there. You don't do anything for 39 years. I said, the comments may be that old woman. We know they see this, if they see this, But I made a lot of friends, and I just can't imagine what my circle would look like if I hadn't been there all this time.
Now that you're retired, how do you spend your days?
Well, you would think it's probably pretty dull. You would probably think it's pretty dull. I don't do a lot. My husband didn't retire when I did, and so there was not much time for travel and that sort of thing. We did go to, we've been to Alaska, and we went out west. And about 20 years ago, there were 6 of us women that worked together, and we decided we wanted to take a vacation. So we went to Savannah first and stayed a week, and we had the best time. So we came back to school, and we said we're going to start going out to eat once a month. We've continued that for 20 years, minus the time when we couldn't go anywhere with COVID. But we call ourselves the Traveling Sisters. There were 6 of us. Now there's 5. Miss Lynn Meredith passed away. But we have missed very few months when we didn't get together, and they're just my best friends. If one of us has a problem, the other 4 pick them up, And I can say that for a lot of the people that I worked with. I feel like I always had a shoulder I could cry on, And sometimes I was the person whose shoulder got cried on. When you work with people that long, you lose family members, they lose family members, they have children, and they become a big part of your life. And I just wouldn't take anything for it.
The relationships that are built at Grayson County High School last a lifetime. There's no question about that. What we're going to do is we're going to take a break and come back and have more from the halftime show coming up after this.